So we should be good. So welcome everyone to our March webinar. I know we just saw you back in January and we're going to see you again in April. But as always, we're so excited to be with you each month to share some information with you all. So today we're going to talk about a few things. We probably won't take the whole hour, but the first thing is we have some updates to their credential, some assessment information, Epicenter information, ESY, 'tis the season, talk a little bit about indicator 14, the high leverage practice for the month, and of course we always have some fun tidbits and additional stuff we like to tell you. So first thing I want to talk about, the high school credential has not changed since it was introduced this year, and we started doing it last year. Right now, our new schools with high school, I need you to review the Google site for the webinars that are done and posted up there on the South Carolina credential. We have not asked you for policies and procedures yet specific to that credential, but I am going to have to gather them from you. Schools that were with us previously last year, unless you want to update anything, we're just, I'm going to send you yours as well, and I'll just need you to update the year and any changes that you want to make to them. But check that support services site and the SC credential site for information and updates. But again, it's more about I need the new schools to review the webinars. This is just schools with high school. Remember, this started with 9th graders this year, and we currently don't have any students on this track in our district.
Then when we look at assessments, we've been talking about, it's been posted in a lot of our newsletters that the alternative assessment window is going on now and ends March 29th. If you have a kiddo that is slated to take these assessments, I've made contact with you and you ask for your plan of when you're going to be assessing the student. When we look at other just testing that's going to be starting this spring, make sure you're working with your school-based test coordinator to understand what the accommodations are, that updated information is there, and that they're being implemented, that there is a plan of communication, because a common testing violation is failure to implement accommodations, and we want those avoided. When you look at students in high school, all students that are in high school have to take assessments. They have to take assessments in math, English, science, and social studies, and then they have to take some sort of a career-based assessment. It doesn't matter if they're on a high school credential, a state diploma, or a certificate of attendance. They all are expected to take it. Now, those students that typically are on certificates of attendance, or the ones that are just going to probably be aging out, those typically are our alternative assessment students, but not always. But all students need to be slated to take assessments. Unfortunately, we do have students that are not on grade level and struggle, who are still required to take EOCs. So if you have questions about that, contact Laura or I, but they all should be doing it, and they should have all the assessments completed by the end of their 3rd year in high school. And then if testing, if you're heavily involved in testing and the implementation of testing, which I'm sure most of you are, make sure that you cancel. If you have a regularly scheduled call with Laura or I, you cancel in advance. Just shoot us an email.
Oh, and we want to wish Jackie Ortmeyer from Charleston Acceleration Academy today, who was so very thorough. We had a scheduled call today, and she texted me to tell me she was on the way to the hospital to go into labor. So I really appreciate her diligence in letting me know. But I'm going to be honest, if I was in labor, I might not be the first person that she thought of. But so shout out to her, and she's in our thoughts to hope that everything goes well for her.
You can do it, Laura.
The secret word this month is outcomes.
I love visual effects.
She's made this fancy. So everybody sees that. The secret word is outcomes. And yes, spelling will count this time since we put it up there for you. Okay, so let's talk Epicenter. Everybody's other favorite thing in the public charter school world. So we are working on cleaning up the tasks. I should have taken care of. I think I took care of the checklist issue this morning that tier 1 and 2 schools were getting, so nobody should be seeing that anymore. If you are, please shoot me an email. I think I cleared it up like we're supposed to, but let me know if it's still showing. Be mindful of timelines for submissions. All of our feedback is going to come through Epicenter. We are still working through our way through CGI 6. I know you guys are tired of hearing that and want some feedback. The only thing that won't come through there will be your IEP feedback. That will come through a separate email from Susan or I in terms of the actual feedback from your IEP. And then on the Google Drive, so I'm learning from Susan, the professional Google site developer. So I created, yes, y'all, I created a new page on the Google site called Epicenter. And in there, in that tab, there is a document that's called Submitting Items Without Having a Task. So you can submit items that don't actually have a task if you need to. So I was so excited I was able to do this. So check it out, because, you know, Susan's the Google site person, not me. But I'm learning from her skills. She's training and teaching me well. Extended school year. So it's that time to start thinking about students for ESY. Woohoo!
I think we should be on the beach. Looks like flip-flops.
Yeah, we need to be on that beach. We all should be on that beach. Meetings should be scheduled or already being held. So on our Google site, there are the guidelines for ESY. It's under IDA resource, and funny as it may, it's called Extended School Year. Look at those if you have a question about ESY and what it entails. Remember, you must have the data to support the team recommendation. So again, there's five possible qualification areas for ESY. The first one, of course, is regression and recruitment. So for that, we're looking at like before a long break, or before, even like if it's a week off. We want to see documentation from before that time and after that time to show that the student is taking an exorbitant amount of time to recoup the skills that they had before they left. And when I say exorbitant amount of time, I don't mean they take like 2 weeks. I mean, it takes like 5 or 6 weeks to get them back to where they were before they went on that break.
And all students have regression over the summer. That's why first quarter is pretty much devoted to following up what happened in fourth quarter. So this is above and beyond the typical student.
Good addition, Susan.
Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome. Critical breakthrough emerging skills. So this documentation is going to look like if we have a student who really is on that cusp, let's say, of reading. We know if we don't provide them support throughout the summer, that's not going to happen. Okay, so those critical skills. Now, pretty much everybody probably could qualify for a critical skill, but you have to make sure you show that documentation and that's going to be looking at, so they've made progress all year, they're jumping this level to this level to this level, we see this trend, and if we don't provide these services in the summer, that trend is going to drop. Interfering behaviors, so those might be things that we know if a student is not in a structured classroom setting, that they will regress in their behaviors. Again, you're going to want documentation of that. So those students are going to be kids we're looking at with behavior plans and FBAs and behavior goals and things like that. Transition is going to be pretty much for our little babies. So if we just identify them, you know, starting, let's say now, March, April, May, to be that are eligible and we're going to provide services, that would be the time we'd want to provide ESY because of the time they've come into the program. Special circumstances can be a variety of things. One issue may be like we have extensive medical absences. A student is sick a lot. We have that documentation. They've missed a lot of school. We want to provide those services and make up that instruction. Not just because they took multiple vacations like Susan takes her kids out on each year. So we want to make sure we have that documentation. But if you have a special circumstance you're not sure of, please just reach out to Susan or I and we can help talk you through it. Remember, if you have any students, which hopefully we don't, who you identified as TBD on your IEPs for ESY, be sure you're going back and holding those meetings. Our recommendation has always been that if it's an initial, you always say no to ESY and the team come back, as opposed to TBD. That way, if you forget to go back and hold a meeting, it's not that big of a deal. But any TBDs, we want to go back and hold those meetings. All ESY meetings must be completed and held by May 17th. So just like last year and the years, if you've been with us, we'll send out a form stack in terms of who are your ESY students, what services, all of that, because that is another indicator and a report that we have to send to the state, which is due that first week of June. So if I get it by May 17th, that gives me time to go through, collect those forms and ask you all questions when something's not clear. So indicator 14. So this one in newsletter, I think 2 weeks ago, but indicator 14 is measured by, obviously, the Office of Special Education for post-secondary outcomes. This is one of the things we're measured on. Some of you got emails about, hey, please verify that these students actually did graduate and what they graduated with when you exited them for Enrich. Just a couple of things to remember. No child at this point, even this coming school year when they graduate, should be marked as credential. We don't have anybody on a credential. We don't offer any credential in our district. So right now for this year, it'd either be graduated with a high school diploma, it would be dropped out if they graduated with something other than a high school diploma, or unless they aged out of the program, that's an option. So really right now there's only 3 options. One of the other things the state does is as students graduate the following, so we're looking at, let's say for instance, this year we're looking at last year's graduating students with disabilities. They also send out surveys to those students to find out what those students are doing. Are they in the military? Are they working? Have they gone on to college or some sort of technical school? In the past, the state has taken that on. Now those count in our LEA determination in terms of what our kids are doing post-graduation. So one thing Susan and I are going to be thinking about and probably getting maybe even a focus group together of high school coordinators is what are ways we as a district can improve our survey results. So we're not going to take over getting these surveys this year. We are highly thinking about it next year because the state is allowing us to. But start thinking about high school folks. What are some ways you can improve getting responses from your students who have graduated the previous year, even students who graduate in December? And then, so thinking about this year's graduating class, what are some things you can do to maybe ensure that when this survey comes out that these parents or students respond? So be thinking about that, and actually not thinking about a focus group is a pretty good idea. I really like that idea I just literally came up with. So if you would like to be a part of our high school focus group for Indicator 14, please, Susan's going to send an email out and you can volunteer. And if you don't, we love to volunteer people. So we'll want a couple of you. So if you don't volunteer, we might volunteer you. Actually, from one of the virtuals, Michelle or Courtney, we'd love to have you guys definitely as a virtual school to kind of get your feel and things that you think we can do to improve those results. Because those results ultimately affect our determination as a district, as a rating by the state. So, things to ponder and think about.
So we're going to focus on our high leverage practice for today or this month. And this was generated from feedback Laura and I have gotten and conversations Laura and I have had. So we're going to talk about families as stakeholders, and that's me and my husband and 2 of my children. I'm just kidding, it's not. But so we're going to talk about families as valuable assets and stakeholders, but also talk about the times where these relationships are challenging. So there is something, and there's the link that has been on our performance gaps or high leverage section on the support services website. That is the Taxonomy for Transition Programming 2.0. It is developed and is research based. It's actually the second version of this type of plan, and this is the most updated one. But they focus on 5 primary practices: student focused planning, family engagement, program structures, interagency collaboration, and student development. This is intended for looking at the transition process for students, but even if a student isn't of transition age in South Carolina, everything we do is the end game, which is the student outcome. That is graduating from high school or graduating with as much knowledge and skill as they can to move forward whatever is their post-secondary plan. So just keep that in mind. And then family engagement, we thought this was a great reference because it is research-based, that family engagement is a critical component of this process. So when we focus more on the family engagement component, this team, and I'll just throw it out there because I'm a super fan of Paula Kohler. If any of you guys like research, Paula Kohler is the spearhead of this. I have a picture of me next to her at a conference if anyone wants to see it. I kind of jumped in the way, and I think it was you, Laura?
It was me who took the picture.
Laura
and
took the
she's
picture.
Not a super fan. She is obsessed with Paula Kohler.
I think she's super smart. So anyway, they break down each of those 5 categories. And for family engagement, they break it down as family involvement, family empowerment, and family preparation. I think as districts, we in schools, we often focus more on the family involvement end and really don't pay enough attention to the family empowerment and preparation side. So you can look under family involvement. It's just understanding who they are, making sure you provide things in oral and communication and in writing. You know, this is stuff like that IDEA requires, that it's in their native language, making sure that they have access to stuff, that they're participants. So to me, there's the basics of checking off a list, and then also going the extra mile to see really what the intent of that family involvement is, and also, is it reciprocal? Are schools just planning for school families to have access, or is there really involvement going on? So you can look at those are best practices, kind of see how your school does, even how your IEPs teams do and teachers do with that. Then when you look over in the middle column is family empowerment. Now, the state that this came from, they were talking about age 14 of transition. We know that that's not true in South Carolina. And federally, I think even IDEA, it's 16.
Sure.
But states can override that and do a lower age, which South Carolina does. But when you look at family empowerment, there's more in-depth information there. It's talking about the needs of the family, structuring that family and giving them support to do the best they can for those students that are being targeted. So talking about transition concepts. And I've often heard, and I see a lot, in younger students' IEPs that the students aren't involved or present. Students can be involved in IEP meetings without being present, and it automatically should not be assumed that students shouldn't be there. I think having conversations with families, how can a student participate, even if presenting something, being there for a short snippet of time, or even just thinking about it and collaborating with families and teachers then they can present that information. But it's about the student. And you also look at childcare needs, different things about families needing assistance. So talk about family empowerment. And empowerment, I think by definition, is giving them the knowledge and the access to stuff to do what they need to do, and not relying on other people for everything. And then family preparation. When we look at family preparation, we're talking about setting high expectations, what supports would be there, and how we facilitate that. So it's a good resource knowing that these things need to be occurring, and with some students to more of an extensive level than others. When we look at families as stakeholders, we feel that best practice is engage new parents or guardians or families or whoever are those stakeholders for that child as soon as possible if they're new to a building. Do not wait until like March, like now, where behavior is on a huge upswing, where contact has to be made. I know as a special education teacher years ago, I would always make it a practice at the beginning of the year. I would send a letter home introducing myself prior to any, school open night or open house, because you're making contact, understanding what your role is with their child. That's just a start. Facilitate reciprocal communication. Just emailing or calling telling parents something is not a reciprocal format. Reciprocal communication is where they are as much of a participant, not just a receiver of information. It's very hard to do, and so it's just nice to know that it's in the back of your mind thinking about it. Do not assume families understand SPED language or roles of staff. Always assume they don't know. Historically, my involvement in schools has always, or as a teacher, was always at the middle and high school level. And by then we kind of assumed parents had been in this, rodeo for a while, and that is not always true. Sometimes parents play a passive role because they don't understand and they don't want to let people know they don't understand. So avoid SPED lingo, and then always introduce each other. Always talk about what their role is with the parent's child. Seek out families to offer information and utilize valuable knowledge. See them as a major stakeholder. Even if you don't agree with what they're saying, they need to have input. The law requires them to have input that needs to be considered. Be mindful of their time when scheduling meetings. Give them options. Don't shoot them an email saying, we want to meet at this day and this time. That's not a reciprocal form of communication. Say, we're thinking about meeting the week of this week, week of March 26th. What days are good for you? Involve them in that process. Plan ahead. I always planned a month in advance. When it was September, I was planning for all my meetings in October because some parents are busy. I know if my child's teacher sent me an email saying, I need to meet, Friday at this time, I would be a little irritated. So make sure you guys have valuable time. Also offer that reciprocal.
Apparently we have 10 minutes.
Oh, we have 10 minutes and we got to cut it off. View things through the perspective of the parent. The language you use, everything, view it through the perspective of the parent. And then challenging meetings. Collaborate with guardians for the agenda. Have an agenda if you know you're going to be in a challenging meeting. The agenda needs to have mutually agreeable topics prioritized. So if you don't go through them, you may have to table the meeting and finish it at a different time. It should have a start and stop time. Hold pre-meetings with critical building staff. So not that everyone is collaborating to be on the same page, but they know what's going to happen. Send all draft documents at least home a week in advance so they can review. We have parents with learning needs that need extra time or need to think about things. Start meetings on time. Even if everyone's there, but you're waiting on someone, you're not starting on time. Have seating mix, so not everyone is on one side from the school and the parents on the other. It looks very adversarial. Be active listening, be an active listener in it, and listen to parents' concerns and requests, and ensure that they have procedural safeguards if there is a disagreement or a refusal. That was gone. I'm talking really fast because we have limited time now.
Y'all, I'm laughing because I didn't realize apparently we only have like 45 minutes. This is a new system and we must have a free account right now. So we only have 45 minutes. So that's why we're going to move this along.
Especially for winded people who talk a lot. So these are things that Laura and I talk about and laugh because it's true. Q-tip. Quit taking it personally. Okay. It's not about the adults. It's about the child. So stop taking everything personally. Super hard to do. Get it. But sometimes we just need to remove ourselves and think about it in a neutral way. And then take the emotion out. That is, from Dragnet, just the facts, ma'am. Take the emotion out because emotion clouds everything. Even if a parent can't do that, as professionals, we must do it. Those are the references. Okay, additional. April 25th is our last face-to-face. It's from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Lunch will not be served. It's at the Columbia office. More information will come out in our newsletter. But Laura and I will be there after 1 p.m. because we're really talking about school-based data, and we will be there to problem solve and brainstorm with you. Be mindful of your processes and uploading documents in Enrich. There's been some very careless mistakes that are happening. We are happy to help you with it, but make sure that you're just being a little more mindful in Enrich and uploading documents. Ensure your department's going through you first, the coordinator, for questions, so you guys can problem solve them, and most of the time you guys can fix them. What?
We have 7 minutes.
Wow, I'm talking fast. Yeah. Okay. One other thing that I forgot to put on here, Laura, that I was reminded when you were talking about indicator 14, make sure that those of you guys who have 8th graders, as you're looking through and knowing your timelines for ESY and everything, make sure those of you who have 8th graders, every 8th grader, if the IEP is valid in the fall, that 8th grader must have a high school outcome listed. If they're pursuing a state diploma, that needs to be indicated. If you know, like they're an alternative assessment kid and they're not going to pursue a state diploma, then the option would be
non-diploma track.
Non-diploma track. Every 8th grader at the end of the year, their IEP has to indicate something. So please make sure you look at your 8th graders.
So just a few things. So the last one about insuring your department. So we get a lot of separate emails from different teachers, psychologists, speech therapists, all that, which we don't necessarily mind, but it can become overwhelming. So just remind them that the process is they come to you first as the coordinator, and then if you can't figure it out, then you would contact either Susan or I. We sometimes just get bombarded with emails and answering questions when really they should be coming to you first and troubleshooting before they come through one of us.
And it also will give you the information if you see patterns of how to train your staff or things to pay attention to.
Okay, so I am not sharing my screen yet anymore. I stopped that. We're still recording. So looking at questions, if you have questions, go ahead and chat them in the box. We have like 5 minutes left because, again, I just got a little box that came up. Your free meeting will end in 10 minutes. So, we're just saying. There is a report in Enrich, Michelle, that yes, you can run about ESY. So I will send that out in the newsletter next Monday. Are there any other questions? If you have any, you can type it in that Zoom group chat. Make sure you click to everyone. All right, well, I'm not seeing any more questions. As always, if you guys have questions, you can either email us or call us or anything like that. We will post this to the Google site once I make sure it's recorded and how we figure out doing that, but we'll get there. But again, if you have any questions about anything, let us know. If not, y'all have a great weekend.
Bye.
So I'm going to stop recording now.